It started with a single Instagram post. No words. Just a carousel of glittering images, flashing lights, laughter, and familiar faces smiling beneath the golden haze of luxury. But as millions of eyes scrolled through Kris Jenner's 70th birthday photo dump, one detail, one absence, hit harder than anything she could have possibly said. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, gone. Vanished. Wiped clean as if they'd never been there. So the question that stopped everyone in their tracks wasn't just, where are they? It was something deeper, something electric. Why did Kris delete them? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. You see, in Hollywood, deletion isn't an accident. It's a message. And when that message comes from Kris Jenner, the woman who built empires out of scandals and heartbreaks, it's not just personal. It's strategic. It's surgical. It's a warning. Imagine for a second that you were Meghan Markle, once a royal, once a global icon of reinvention. You step into Kris Jenner's world, a glittering mansion full of legends, billionaires, and celebrities who can make or break a career with a whisper. You think it's your chance at a fresh start. You dress to impress. You flash that camera-ready smile. You feel the heat of the spotlight again. And then, 48 hours later, you open Instagram and realize you've been erased from Hollywood's most powerful woman's memory. But was it really about Meghan? Or was this the final move in a silent war between two queens? One who rules Calabasas and one who once ruled Windsor? That's what tonight's story is about. Because beneath the champagne bubbles and flower walls of Kris Jenner's 70th birthday bash, something darker was brewing. A quiet shift in Hollywood loyalty. One that exposed the fragile alliance between Meghan Markle and the Kardashian empire. Now here's where it gets wild. Prince Harry and Meghan were reportedly among the high-profile guests at the event. Witnesses saw them arrive late, slipping in through a side entrance to avoid paparazzi. For a couple supposedly tired of attention, that was ironic enough. But what happened inside that party would rewrite how Tinseltown viewed them forever. Let's rewind. Kris Jenner's 70th wasn't just any birthday. It was a coronation. Imagine chandeliers dripping with crystals, tables wrapped in cream silk, and an endless parade of A-listers. Oprah, Kim, Jeff Bezos, Ellen DeGeneres, and even designers flown in from Paris just for the occasion. Every guest knew that being there meant something. You weren't just invited to a party. You were being stamped as relevant, accepted, part of Kris's inner galaxy of stars. So why were Meghan and Harry there? Because for Meghan, proximity to power is the oxygen she breathes. Hollywood royalty meets British royalty. It was supposed to be the ultimate full-circle moment. A statement that she still belonged, that she could command the same rooms as before. But if there's one thing Kris Jenner hates, it's when someone else tries to command her room. According to one insider, Meghan arrived dressed in a bold, shimmery gown that screamed red carpet energy, except it wasn't a red carpet event. It felt like she wanted to make it her night, the source said. And for Kris, that was strike one. The night unfolded in typical Kardashian style, lavish, chaotic, meticulously documented. Cameras everywhere. Every guest knew their place, their angle, their lighting. Every smile was a negotiation. But when Meghan tried to pose beside Kris during the main group photo, something shifted. Eyewitnesses described a tense pause, a micro-expression from Kris, a half-step backward, a polite but pointed repositioning. It was subtle, almost invisible to the untrained eye, but not to the cameras, and certainly not to Kris. Because that's the thing about Kris Jenner. She's not just a mother or a manager. She's a myth-maker. Every image she releases is crafted like a chess move. And when she later reviewed those photos, word is, one particular set featuring Meghan and Harry didn't make the cut. You can almost imagine the conversation. Should we include this one? An assistant might have asked. Kris, glancing at the preview, a glass of Dom Perignon in hand, replying coolly, no, take it out. And just like that, two of the most talked-about names in the world were digitally exiled from the night's narrative. But it wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about allegiance. Hollywood's whispers tell a bigger story, one that's been simmering for months. Meghan Markle had been quietly trying to position herself closer to the Kardashian-Jenner orbit, seeing them as the ultimate blueprint for media power. From business to beauty to storytelling, Kris had built what Meghan wanted, a global brand that commands respect and control. But Kris saw through the act. She's not authentic, one PR insider reportedly told a magazine afterward. Kris doesn't align herself with drama she didn't create. That line hit like a thunderclap. Because for Meghan, drama isn't something that happens to her. It's something that follows her. Think about it. Every time she enters a room, the atmosphere bends. For better or worse, she brings gravity. And while that used to make her irresistible to networks and brands, it now makes her radioactive. The Netflix deal, the Spotify fallout, the constant headlines about royal estrangement. For Kris, whose empire thrives on controlled chaos, not uncontrolled scandal, that was simply too risky. But here's where things twist. Meghan wasn't completely blindsided. She knew the deletion happened almost instantly. Fans spotted the missing images within hours, screenshots started circulating, and suddenly, her team was in panic mode. Do we respond? Do we ignore it? They asked. But the damage was done. Kris's silence was louder than any press statement. Now imagine Harry watching it unfold. The man who once accused the royal family of manipulation, now caught in a PR nightmare orchestrated by an even savvier queen. He reportedly told friends he was done with Hollywood games. But what he didn't realize is, Hollywood is the game. And Kris? She just played him like a professional. By deleting them, she did more than protect her image. She reshaped the conversation. Every blog, every outlet, every influencer started speculating. Why were they removed? Was there a falling out? Was it pressure from another guest? Did Kim or Khloe have a say? It became a mystery too juicy to ignore. And as with every good Kardashian scandal, the silence became the story. Meanwhile, in Meghan's world, silence equals weakness. Her instinct is to explain, defend, redirect. But this time, nothing worked. No one was calling. No one was offering airtime. And as the hours turned into days, the internet crowned Kris Jenner the victor in a war Meghan didn't even realize she'd started. But what if the deletion wasn't just about a feud or bad blood? What if it was Kris Jenner's way of warning Hollywood to distance itself before the next royal implosion? Because behind that glossy birthday dump was a whisper network of producers, agents, and investors quietly discussing Meghan's reputation. And Kris Jenner, being the unofficial mayor of Hollywood, just gave her verdict without ever saying a word. Now, think about the irony. For years, Meghan framed herself as the victim of British royal elitism. Now, in the land of freedom and reinvention, she's facing the same silent exile, this time by the queen of reality TV. And Kris didn't just erase her from one post. She erased her from the conversation. No tag, no mention, no trace. Hollywood understood the message instantly. If Kris doesn't post you, you don't exist. For a woman who built an entire brand around being seen, that's the most brutal cut imaginable. You can almost feel Meghan's frustration boiling beneath the surface. The subtle Instagram likes she withdrew. The carefully timed sources close to Meghan stories appearing in minor outlets. The desperate attempts to remind the world she was still connected to power. But it all felt too little, too late. And Kris? She was busy posting brunch selfies, toasting champagne, and moving on. No shade, no statement, just quiet dominance. It's a masterclass in modern influence. In the Kardashian kingdom, your relevance is your currency, and once that's revoked, you're invisible. So when fans began speculating online, did Meghan do something to offend her? Did Harry say something? The real insiders stayed silent. Because in that world, silence means protection. No one crosses Kris, not even a duchess. But maybe, just maybe, this deletion was bigger than gossip. Maybe it was symbolic. A sign that Hollywood has finally turned the page on Meghan Markle's Hollywood experiment. Because at the end of the day, this wasn't about a missing photo. It was about power. Who has it? Who lost it? And who can erase it with a single tap of a finger? As Kris's post continued to break records and attract headlines, something eerie happened. People started noticing patterns. Meghan had also been missing from other celebrity circles recently. Events she was rumored to attend, she didn't. Collaborations she teased, never materialized. It was like her Hollywood reboot had hit a silent wall. And that's when a rumor began spreading. That Kris Jenner wasn't the only one cutting ties. Was this the beginning of Meghan's Hollywood blacklisting? Because when Kris deletes you, the ripple effect is real. PR agents talk. Sponsors back off. Even friendly media outlets start rewriting your narrative. Suddenly, you're not a guest list essential, you're a liability. It's brutal, but that's how power works in LA. Now, picture Meghan sitting in her Montecito mansion, scrolling through Kris's glittering photos. Kim laughing beside Bezos, Khloe dancing with Oprah, Kendall gliding across the dance floor. All while she and Harry are nowhere to be found. Did she feel angry? Betrayed? Or maybe she understood. Maybe, deep down, she realized Kris Jenner just played the game better. Because in the entertainment world, erasure isn't cruelty, it's control. And for Kris Jenner, that's the only rule that matters. But here's the part no one saw coming. While the world dissected Kris's deleted post, someone inside that very party had already leaked what really happened between Meghan and Kris that night. And once that story surfaced, everything we thought we knew about their relationship flipped upside down. What was said? What was overheard? What caused Kris Jenner, the ultimate connector, to draw the line? And the truth? Oh, the truth would ignite a Hollywood firestorm. But what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. It all began long before the night of Kris Jenner's 70th birthday party. Before the flashing cameras, the glimmering gowns, the billion-dollar smiles. This wasn't an invitation sent overnight. This was a calculated move, years in the making, a slow-burning pursuit of status that finally led Meghan Markle straight to Calabasas. Because let's be honest, Kris Jenner doesn't invite people by accident. She doesn't bump into anyone. Every handshake, every selfie, every dinner guest is part of a bigger web of strategy. To be in her orbit, you have to offer something: power, influence, or pure entertainment value. And Meghan, in her mind, had all three. But what Meghan didn't realize was that Kris already had her number. Let's rewind the clock to when Meghan and Harry first landed in California. After stepping down from royal duties, they were looking for something America could give them that Buckingham Palace never could: freedom, fame, and validation. They wanted to reinvent themselves as global influencers, not just royals on the run. And who better to learn from than the woman who built an empire from family drama? That's right, Kris Jenner. Within months of the Sussexes' arrival, whispers started circulating in LA's PR circles. Meghan's team was quietly seeking connections to Kris's inner network. They didn't ask directly. That's not how this game is played. It began with small overlaps. A charity event Kris supported. A stylist they both used. A discreet lunch between one of Meghan's publicists and one of Kris's assistants. The message was subtle but clear: Meghan wanted in. And at first, Kris didn't bite. She'd seen too many next big things come and go. But then came the Oprah connection. Meghan's bombshell interview, the one that split the world into two camps, believers and skeptics, had drawn massive attention. And guess who was close to Oprah? Kris Jenner. Behind the scenes, that interview didn't just shake the monarchy, it fascinated Hollywood. Because it was the perfect Kardashian-style spectacle: tears, betrayal, truth bombs, and drama wrapped in luxury. Kris admired the format, the marketing, even the framing. But she also saw through the chaos. They don't control their story, she allegedly told a friend. They let the story control them. Still, she couldn't deny the publicity power. Meghan was a headline magnet, and that alone made her interesting. Fast forward to 2023, when plans for Kris's 70th birthday bash started taking shape. It was more than a celebration, it was a show of dominance. A declaration that after decades in the spotlight, she was still the most powerful woman in entertainment. Invitations were gold dust. Each one meant something. Each name added to the list had to elevate the brand. When Meghan's name came up, there was hesitation. "Are we sure about this?" one assistant allegedly asked. "There's a lot of noise around her right now." Kris smiled, the kind of smile that hides calculation. "Let her come," she said. "Let's see what she does." That was all the approval Meghan needed. She viewed the invite as a victory, proof that she was being welcomed back into the upper echelon of Hollywood. The Kardashians weren't just reality stars. They were the gatekeepers of influence. Meghan believed that if she could be seen among them, photographed beside Kris, she could finally rewrite her public narrative. To Meghan, the birthday was a stage. But to Kris, it was an audition. The day of the party arrived like a Hollywood fairy tale. Black cars lined the private driveway. Paparazzi hovered from a distance, guessing who was inside. The theme was golden glamour, a throwback to old Hollywood elegance. Guests wore shimmering golds, creams, and silvers. Champagne flowed from glass towers. A live orchestra played jazz versions of pop hits. And somewhere amid the glitz, Meghan Markle made her entrance. Witnesses say she arrived slightly late, just after Kim and before Jeff Bezos, a strategic placement, whether intentional or not. She wore a gown that glistened under the chandelier light, designed to command attention without looking desperate. Or at least, that was the plan. Prince Harry trailed behind, smiling politely but noticeably uncomfortable. He wasn't made for this world anymore. The red carpets, the flashbulbs, the performative conversations, it was all too much. But Meghan thrived on it. Her stride said everything. I belong here. As she moved through the crowd, her charm was on full display. Compliments, laughter, air kisses. She chatted with Ellen DeGeneres, exchanged warm words with Oprah, even congratulated Kim on her new brand deal. Every move was polished, precise. For a while, it worked. Then, she approached Kris. The birthday queen herself stood near the center of the room, surrounded by her daughters, wearing a floor-length black gown dripping with jewels. Cameras hovered nearby, documenting every second. When Meghan stepped up, Kris turned, smiled, and greeted her with that trademark hug, half warmth, half stagecraft. The room stilled for just a moment. Two icons from two worlds finally in the same frame. To the guests, it seemed cordial. But behind those smiles was something unspoken, a quiet power struggle. Meghan wanted acceptance. Kris wanted control. They posed for a few photos. Laughs were exchanged. Compliments about outfits, family, mutual friends. But something about the interaction felt rehearsed. Later, several guests claimed Kris seemed slightly guarded around Meghan, like she was measuring her every word. And that's because Kris Jenner doesn't do spontaneous. Every conversation at her event serves a purpose. And when Meghan began hinting about collaboration opportunities or shared values in storytelling, Kris reportedly shifted gears, excusing herself with a graceful, "Let's talk about that soon, darling." Translation, not now, and maybe never. But Meghan didn't pick up on it. She thought the exchange had gone beautifully. She even asked her photographer to make sure the shots with Kris were well lit, because she planned to post one later. That's where things started to go wrong. You see, at a Kardashian event, nothing gets posted without Kris's approval. It's an unspoken rule. Every image, every tag, every caption goes through an invisible filter of brand protection. And when Meghan's team began privately asking about photo rights, it sent up red flags. She's trying to make this her headline. One attendee allegedly overheard someone from Kris's team say. Meanwhile, Kris was watching. She'd seen this before. Newcomers trying to piggyback on the Kardashian spotlight. It never ends well. In her world, fame isn't shared. It's earned, curated, and controlled. Meghan had walked into Kris's empire with a royal sense of entitlement, forgetting that in Hollywood, titles mean nothing. Influence does. Still, Kris kept things polite. After all, this was her 70th, and appearances mattered. She let Meghan and Harry enjoy the evening, mingle, and even join a few group shots near the end of the night. But she'd already made up her mind. Later that night, as Kris's team sorted through hundreds of photos for the big birthday dump, the ones featuring Meghan and Harry were quietly moved into a separate folder labeled Do Not Use. To Kris, it was simple. They didn't fit the tone. The event was about family, legacy, and love, not controversy, lawsuits, and tabloid tension. Including them would have shifted the narrative from celebration to speculation. And if there's one thing Kris Jenner avoids, it's losing control of the narrative. But let's pause for a second. Why did Meghan think being at that party mattered so much? Because, deep down, she's been fighting for legitimacy ever since she left the royal palace. She thought that if Hollywood royalty accepted her, it would prove she didn't need the crown to shine. She underestimated how brutal that validation game can be. Because in Los Angeles, fame is currency, but relevance is survival. And Kris? She's the central bank. To her, Meghan was a depreciating asset. Too much controversy, not enough control. The moment the public starts rolling their eyes instead of leaning in, Kris cuts ties. That's how she's kept her empire scandal-proof for decades. But the story doesn't end there. After the party, Meghan reportedly told close friends that she finally felt embraced by real power players. She thought the event went perfectly. She even drafted a thank you post, complete with emojis and a heartfelt caption about inspiring women supporting women. That post never saw the light of day, because by the time she was ready to share it, Kris had already posted her own photo dump, and Meghan was nowhere in sight. At first, Meghan assumed it was an oversight. Maybe the photos didn't turn out right. Maybe Kris's team wanted to post them later. But then, the comments started rolling in. Fans noticed the omission instantly. Where's Meghan and Harry? Didn't they attend? Why would Kris leave them out? And that's when reality hit. Kris Jenner doesn't do accidents. Every frame, every caption, every tag is calculated. The absence was deliberate. It was a quiet statement broadcast to millions. Meghan Markle was not part of the family, not part of the brand, not part of the story. It's the modern version of a royal exile. Except this time, the Queen's crown was a Prada clutch, and her kingdom was built on reality television and billion-dollar cosmetics lines. The parallels are almost poetic. Meghan escaped one monarchy only to be rejected by another. And while she sat in Montecito, refreshing her feed, Kris Jenner was already onto her next project, planning new campaigns, meeting with CEOs, expanding her empire. Meghan was just a deleted thumbnail in a folder no one would ever open again. But that wasn't the end. Because what Kris didn't expect was how quickly Meghan would try to reclaim the spotlight. Within hours, Meghan's team started leaking stories, claims about her deep connection with Kris, that they shared laughs and talked future ventures. They even hinted that Meghan was part of the inner circle now. But when Kris saw those headlines, she reportedly laughed. "That girl doesn't know who she's playing with," she told a friend. It wasn't anger. It was amusement. The kind that comes from watching someone try to manipulate the master of manipulation. And that's when Kris decided to send the clearest message possible. No words. No confrontation. Just deletion. She instructed her social media team to ensure not a single image featuring Meghan or Harry appeared anywhere on her or her family's pages. Total erasure. Digital exile. To the public, it was silent. To Meghan, it was deafening. Because in Hollywood, being unseen is worse than being hated. You can recover from bad press. You can't recover from irrelevance. And as Meghan's name vanished from the Kardashian birthday narrative, something shifted in the entertainment world. The whispers started. Did Kris ice her out? Did Meghan overstep? Did something happen that night? And the truth? Oh, something did happen. Something that none of them wanted to become public. Something that turned what should have been a harmless birthday photo into a declaration of war between two of the most powerful women in modern pop culture. And when that truth finally leaked, it sent shockwaves through Hollywood and made Meghan wish she'd never stepped foot inside that Calabasas mansion. But what happened behind those closed doors would stun even her closest allies. Because one overheard conversation that night, one whispered remark, would become the final straw that made Kris Jenner say, "Delete her." And what Kris heard would change everything. They say in Hollywood, reputation is your shadow. It follows you everywhere, even when you try to outrun it. But in Kris Jenner's world, that shadow doesn't just follow you. She edits it, filters it, and if you cross the line, she deletes it. That's the first rule of Calabasas. Control the narrative or be erased from it. And for Meghan Markle, that was a rule she was about to learn the hard way. Because while the world saw glamour, laughter, and champagne flutes clinking beneath chandeliers, behind the cameras, something entirely different was happening. A quiet but ruthless choreography directed by Kris herself. Every celebrity at that party knew the code. You didn't wander off into someone else's spotlight. You didn't hijack a moment meant for the matriarch. You didn't control the angles unless Kris allowed it. But Meghan? She didn't know the code. And that's where everything started to unravel. Picture it, the party in full swing. The music thumping softly under the hum of 1,000 conversations. Waiters gliding through the crowd with trays of caviar. The Kardashian daughters shimmering like moving jewels in custom gowns. And at the center of it all, Kris Jenner, calm, poised, the eye of the storm she created. Now add Meghan Markle to the mix. Confident, radiant, but slightly out of tune with the rhythm of the room. Her every gesture screamed self-conscious precision, the kind of performance you learn when you've spent your life curating every angle of your existence. To most people, it looked like she was just trying to fit in. But to Kris, it looked like she was trying to take control. Insiders later revealed that Kris noticed something off almost immediately. The subtle repositioning near cameras, the whispered requests to photographers, the way Meghan drifted toward every cluster of power guests. One PR manager reportedly said, "She was networking like it was a red carpet press event, not a private birthday dinner." That was mistake number one. In Kris Jenner's empire, visibility isn't a free-for-all. It's a privilege. Her philosophy is simple. Everyone in her orbit must reinforce her narrative, not their own. The Kardashians built an empire not by chasing attention, but by controlling its flow. When Kim posts, it's pre-cleared. When Khloe shares, it fits the brand. When Kylie drops a product, the timing aligns with Kris's calendar. Everything is synchronized. So when Meghan started moving through the room as if she were the main character, Kris's expression hardened. She didn't have to say a word. Her daughters noticed. Her team noticed. Everyone in that circle could feel the temperature shift. She was observing, one guest recalled. Not angry, just calculating. You could see it in her eyes. Kris doesn't raise her voice. She raises consequences. And consequences were already forming in her mind. At one point in the evening, photographers were setting up for the iconic family moment, a shot Kris had been planning for months. It was meant to be timeless, generational. Her daughters, their partners, close friends, and a few select Hollywood allies. Meghan, sensing the buzz, began to move closer, casually positioning herself near the edge of the frame. Harry followed, looking uncomfortable but loyal. He wasn't trying to steal the moment. He just didn't want to leave her alone in the crowd. But Kris saw it all. A flick of the wrist, a quiet whisper to her coordinator, and within seconds, a polite staff member stepped between Meghan and the camera, gently redirecting her toward a nearby table. "We're getting one more shot of the family first," they said with a practiced smile. It was subtle, elegant, but firm. Meghan had just been moved out of Kris's frame. To Kris, it was nothing personal. It was business. Her brand came first, always. But to Meghan, it was humiliation disguised as hospitality. Observers say Meghan's smile faltered for a second, her eyes tightening. She laughed it off, but the sting was obvious. For someone who'd spent her entire career mastering optics, being sidelined like that was a gut punch. And Kris noticed that, too. Because in her world, reactions are data. And Meghan's reaction told Kris everything she needed to know. This woman doesn't handle exclusion quietly. A few minutes later, when the family photo session wrapped up, Kris was overheard saying something cryptic to one of her assistants. If she doesn't understand boundaries, she'll learn. Boundaries. That's the word that defines Kris Jenner. She's built her empire on controlling access to herself, her family, her image. The closer you get, the stricter the rules become. And once you cross them, there's no coming back. Ask anyone who's been exiled from that circle, former friends, stylists, PR partners. They'll all say the same thing. One day you're in every frame, and the next, you don't exist. And that's exactly what was about to happen to Meghan Markle. Later that night, during one of the quieter moments, Meghan was reportedly seen speaking animatedly with Kim Kardashian. Witnesses say she was telling stories about royal life, palace restrictions, media control, private struggles. But instead of impressing Kim, it left her unsettled. She kept comparing the royal family to show business, one attendee said. But for the Kardashians, that's sacred ground. They own their fame. They don't see it as a burden. That's when Kris's real rule became clear. You can't come into her kingdom and act like you've suffered from the very thing she built her empire on. To Kris, Meghan's attitude wasn't relatable, it was threatening. Because if Meghan could portray the spotlight as toxic, she could undermine the very foundation that keeps the Kardashians powerful. That was mistake number two. And yet, Meghan didn't seem to notice the walls closing in. She kept mingling, laughing, trying to find allies. But around her, something had shifted. Conversations stopped when she approached. Cameras turned away. The invisible current of approval that keeps Hollywood relationships alive had vanished. She didn't realize the vibe had changed, said another guest. It was like she was dancing on a rug Kris had already started pulling from under her. But here's the thing. Meghan wasn't wrong about wanting to control her image. She'd been burned before. The tabloids, the royal leaks, the endless online hate. Control had become her armor. But in Kris's kingdom, that armor looked like arrogance. And for Kris, arrogance is the ultimate deal breaker. Later, as the night wound down, Kris gathered a few of her closest confidants in a private lounge, a quieter corner away from the chaos. The music softened, the laughter faded, and she shared her verdict in that calm, measured tone she's famous for. "She's too unpredictable," Kris said simply. "And unpredictable people don't last here." Those words sealed Meghan's fate, because unpredictability doesn't fit in a scripted empire. From that point on, the decision was made. When the event photos were reviewed, any image that featured Meghan and Harry was marked for exclusion. It wasn't anger. It was standard procedure. Kris was pruning her narrative garden, and Meghan was a weed that had grown too fast, too loud. But Kris wasn't cruel. She didn't make a scene. She didn't confront Meghan. She let the erasure happen silently, an unspoken lesson delivered with elegance. And when Meghan saw that she'd been cut from the post, she learned the golden rule of Hollywood influence. Silence can destroy you faster than scandal. It's almost poetic how similar Kris and Meghan actually are. Two women obsessed with image, both skilled manipulators of perception, both craving control over their stories. The difference? Kris knows when to speak and when to disappear. Meghan, on the other hand, never mastered the art of silence. Because silence, in Kris's world, isn't weakness. It's power. And that's what separates the Calabasas queen from every other celebrity trying to stay relevant. She doesn't chase headlines, she curates them. She doesn't panic when controversy hits, she monetizes it. Meanwhile, Meghan reacts, explains, defends, talks, and every word digs the hole deeper. So when Meghan's team started whispering to tabloids about how warm and gracious Kris had been, hoping to reinforce the image of friendship, Kris knew it was time to end the dance. "Take them out," she told her social media manager. "Everywhere." 3 words. That's all it took. Within minutes, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry were gone from the narrative. No trace. No context. Just gone. And Kris didn't need to say why. Everyone already knew. Because that's the second rule of Calabasas. When Kris deletes you, it's forever. Still, what made this deletion sting wasn't just the public embarrassment. It was what it represented. The collapse of a dream Meghan had been chasing since she left the palace. She thought she could build her own kingdom, merge royal prestige with Hollywood glamour. But Kris's deletion made it clear. Hollywood doesn't care about titles. It only respects strategy. Kris saw Meghan not as a threat, but as a liability. Someone who could bring drama without profit. And in Kris's economy, that's the worst kind of investment. What's chilling is how calm Kris was about it all. There was no anger, no gossip, no confrontation. Just precision. Her silence wasn't emotional, it was managerial. She'd made her decision, and that was that. By morning, the Instagram post had gone live. Glittering photos, flawless edits, a perfect reflection of the Kardashian empire, and not a trace of the Sussexes. Hollywood got the message instantly. Did she just delete Meghan? One producer texted another. "She sure did," came the reply. "Welcome to the new royal family." Because that's what Kris Jenner really is, the queen of modern royalty. Her crown isn't gold, it's relevance. Her throne isn't marble, it's the algorithm. And her weapon isn't a scepter, it's a delete button. For Meghan, that realization must have been brutal. You can imagine her sitting there, scrolling through that post, heart racing, refreshing the page, waiting for her photo to appear. But it never did. The silence screamed louder than words. And in that silence, Kris had sent her message loud and clear. Control the narrative, or lose it entirely. But Kris wasn't done teaching lessons. Because that night, a conversation between Meghan and a mutual acquaintance had been overheard, one that touched on topics Kris considered taboo. A conversation that would soon reach Kris's ears and push her from silent erasure to outright exile. And when Kris heard what Meghan said behind her back, she didn't just delete her. She made sure Hollywood did, too. What Meghan didn't know was that her words would soon echo through the very industry she'd fought so hard to belong to. And Kris would use those words to close the door for good. But what Kris heard would ignite the real fallout. And no one, not even Meghan herself, was ready for the storm it unleashed. When Kris Jenner posts, the world pays attention. She doesn't need to shout. She doesn't need to tease. She just drops it, calmly, deliberately, like a queen signing a royal decree, and the internet erupts. That's exactly what happened the morning after her 70th birthday celebration. A soft sunrise over Calabasas, the city still quiet, and suddenly, boom. Instagram lights up. A single post, no caption needed. Just a series of images drenched in gold, laughter, and wealth so overwhelming you could almost hear it hum. It wasn't a slideshow. It was a statement. "Happy birthday, Queen," wrote Kim. "Icon," commented Oprah. "Legend," said Bezos's fiancée, dropping a heart emoji. The comments poured in by the thousands. Celebrities, stylists, influencers, all orbiting the gravity of Kris's perfection. Fans zoomed in on every detail, the gowns, the table settings, the cake that looked more like art than dessert. But amid the praise and the frenzy, something strange began to happen. People started noticing what wasn't there. "Wait, wasn't Meghan Markle there?" one user asked. "Where's Prince Harry?" another wrote. "Didn't someone post a story with them last night?" The questions multiplied. Threads exploded on Reddit. TikToks went viral within hours, dissecting every frame of Kris's post. And soon, the internet's favorite pastime, detective work, was in full swing. Fans began cross-referencing leaked photos from party guests, trying to find Meghan and Harry. Some spotted the edge of a familiar hairstyle in a blurred background. Others claimed to have seen Meghan's reflection in a mirrored pillar. But the more they looked, the clearer it became. They were gone. Not forgotten. Deleted. And that's when the narrative flipped from admiration to speculation. Because in the Kardashian universe, nothing is accidental. A missing image doesn't mean an oversight. It means an erasure. Online gossip accounts lit up like fireworks. "Kris Jenner cuts Meghan Markle from her 70th birthday pics," screamed one headline. "Hollywood queen dethrones royal wannabe," claimed another. Within hours, hashtag KrisJenner70th and hashtag WhereIsMeghan trended side by side. People weren't just scrolling, they were analyzing, studying expressions, frame compositions, angles. The internet had turned Kris's photo dump into a crime scene, and every missing face was a clue. But the more theories piled up, the more powerful Kris's silence became. She didn't respond. Not a word. No clarification, no defense. Just quiet, confident stillness, the kind that only a woman who owns the narrative can afford. Because Kris knew exactly what she was doing. You see, in today's world, the photo dump is more than a post. It's a ritual of cultural dominance. It tells the world who matters, who's connected, and who's out of frame. And Kris Jenner, the architect of celebrity itself, has mastered it. Every slide was perfectly curated. The opening image, Kris in a champagne-colored gown, eyes sparkling, surrounded by her daughters. The next few, Kim laughing beside Bezos, Khloe with Oprah, Kylie raising a toast under a crystal chandelier. Every frame screamed legacy, love, and loyalty. And then nothing. No sign of the Sussexes. No Meghan. No Harry. No trace they'd ever existed in that moment. It was surgical, and that's what made it hurt more. Behind closed doors, Meghan reportedly noticed the omission before most people. A friend had sent her the link early, captioned simply, "Did you see this?" She clicked, expecting to see herself there, radiant, photographed beside the Hollywood elite, maybe even in a frame with Kris. Instead, she found nothing. No images. No mentions. Not even a hint she'd been there. For Meghan, that post wasn't just a social snub, it was a public execution. Because to someone who's spent her life cultivating an image, deletion feels like annihilation. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe Kris hadn't seen the photos yet. Maybe her team was planning another post. Maybe the lighting wasn't good. But deep down, she knew. Kris Jenner doesn't make mistakes. And while Meghan sat there scrolling through golden images that excluded her, Harry reportedly said nothing. He knew exactly what had happened, and he knew Kris had done it on purpose. Because in Hollywood, silence speaks louder than any feud. And Kris's silence was deafening. But the internet doesn't stay silent for long. Within hours, gossip accounts began piecing together their theories. Some claimed the Kardashians were distancing themselves from Meghan's controversies. Others suggested Kris had received private pressure from another guest. One even joked that Meghan had tried to steal Kim's spotlight. The memes exploded. Kris deleted Meghan faster than Spotify deleted archetypes. Kris's unfollow button is mightier than the crown. It was cruel, but it was viral. And Kris? She let it happen. Because here's the genius of her strategy. Every post she makes is a Rorschach test. People see what they want to see. Some see glamour. Some see control. Some see revenge. But all of them see. And in the economy of attention, visibility is power. So while Meghan panicked, Kris basked. The engagement was through the roof. Tens of millions of impressions. News outlets covering the party. The Kardashians trending globally once again. And all without a single mention of Meghan Markle. That's power. But behind the glitz, there was something else brewing. A private storm that would soon spill into public view. Because what the world didn't know was that Kris's decision to delete Meghan wasn't made at random. It came after an uncomfortable, overheard moment that changed everything. Someone close to Kris's circle had told her something. Something Meghan allegedly said at the party. Something that crossed a line no one crosses with Kris Jenner. And when Kris heard it, she decided to end the relationship immediately. That story would come later, leaked by someone inside the Kardashian camp. But for now, all anyone could see was the deletion and the ripple effect it created. Hollywood noticed. You see, Kris Jenner doesn't just represent her family. She represents a network of influence that stretches across entertainment, fashion, and media. If she cuts you out, others follow. It's unspoken, but it's real. And that's exactly what began to happen. Within days of the post, invitations dried up. Brand whispers slowed. Even friendly celebrity acquaintances stopped tagging Meghan and shared posts. It wasn't coordinated, but it was collective, like a silent retreat from someone who'd suddenly become too risky to be around. For Meghan, it must have felt like déjà vu. She'd escaped the rigid hierarchy of the royal family only to fall into another. One even colder, even more calculated. In the palace, rejection came in the form of silence. In Hollywood, it comes with a swipe. And this time, the queen pressing the button wasn't Elizabeth. It was Kris Jenner. But what made the internet lose its mind wasn't just the deletion, it was the symbolism. The contrast between Kris's glowing, unified family images and Meghan's quiet isolation in Montecito. The internet thrives on irony, and this one was too delicious to resist. Meghan got ghosted by the Kardashians. One viral tweet read. Another said, she left the royals to join Hollywood royalty and got uninvited from the kingdom. The public devoured every theory. YouTubers broke it down frame by frame. Commentators debated the meaning of one missing tag. Tabloids plastered side-by-side comparisons of Kris's feed and paparazzi leaks. And the more people talked, the more Meghan's silence became part of the spectacle. Because, for once, she didn't respond. Not officially. Not directly. Her team released no statement, no denial. Just a vague, sources say Meghan had a wonderful time at the event. But that only made it worse. Because in the absence of clarity, the internet wrote its own story. And that story was brutal. To them, Kris Jenner had just done what the royal family couldn't. Publicly strip Meghan of her status, her access, her symbolic power. And she did it with one post. You could almost hear the digital gasp across the world. Now, here's the delicious irony. Kris Jenner's photo dump wasn't just a celebration, it was a purge. While fans obsessed over the missing royal couple, no one noticed that a few other faces had vanished too. Old family friends, ex-partners, former business allies. Kris had trimmed her guest list visually, leaving only those who strengthened her brand. She wasn't just deleting people, she was editing her history. That's what makes Kris dangerous. She doesn't destroy reputations. She rewrites them. And when she deletes you, it's like being erased from a shared dream, one where your reflection vanishes, but everyone else keeps dancing. For Meghan, the psychological impact was profound. She'd once believed that controlling her image would protect her. But in that moment, she realized the painful truth. Control is only power when others care to look. Without Kris's validation, Hollywood wasn't looking anymore. And that realization cracked something inside her. Behind closed doors, Meghan reportedly snapped at her PR advisor, saying, "Do you understand how this makes me look? Like I wasn't even invited." The advisor hesitated before answering softly. Maybe that's how she wants it to look. That was the moment Meghan understood. This wasn't about exclusion, it was about dominance. Kris hadn't just deleted her photo. She deleted her presence. And to someone like Meghan, that's the ultimate humiliation. But Kris wasn't finished. Because while Meghan's team scrambled to save face, another part of the story was quietly unfolding. One that would soon make the deletion look like child's play. It started with a single phone call. A conversation so cold, so short, that it left Meghan speechless. And once that call ended, there was no going back. Because Kris Jenner was about to make sure Meghan Markle learned what happens when you try to control her narrative. And the next move? It wouldn't just end a friendship. It would end Meghan's Hollywood comeback, for good. But before that, the world needed to hear what Kris said on that phone call. And when it leaked, it shattered Meghan's confidence in ways she never expected. Because in Kris Jenner's world, deletion isn't the end. It's just the beginning of erasure. If you think the drama stopped with Kris Jenner's photo dump, you're wrong. That post was only the public chapter of the story. The real chaos began the night of the party, when Meghan Markle, according to multiple inside sources, tried to choreograph her own spotlight moment inside Kris's mansion. And that single act, small as it may have seemed in the chaos of champagne and laughter, set off a chain reaction that made Kris whisper two infamous words to her media team: delete her. Because at Kris Jenner's parties, everything is documented, but only the right things make it out alive. So let's go back to that golden night. The chandeliers glowed like constellations, the air smelled of roses and expensive perfume, and every guest looked camera-ready. But the rule of the room was simple. Kris controls the cameras. Nobody else. Yet somewhere between the dessert course and the after-party toasts, Meghan broke that rule. One witness later described it perfectly. It was like she was directing her own movie inside Kris's movie. She didn't mean harm, at least, not consciously. Meghan's instinct to curate moments runs deep. Years of red carpets, palace photo ops, Netflix shoots, it's almost automatic. If there's a lens nearby, she knows where to stand, where to look, what emotion sells best. But in Kris's world, that instinct can look like theft. And that's exactly how Kris saw it. According to an assistant who helped coordinate the event, Meghan had approached the main photographer, Kris's photographer, between shots. She leaned in, smiled warmly, and said something like, "Could we get one more of me and Kris together? I think it would be a lovely highlight for both of us." To most people, that sounds innocent. But in the coded language of celebrity politics, it's a red flag. Because what Meghan was really asking for, intentionally or not, was to share Kris Jenner's headline. Kris's photographer hesitated. He glanced toward Kris's personal aide, who subtly shook her head. "We're keeping it moving, ma'am," he told Meghan politely. "We have a schedule." For Meghan, that brush-off felt like a slap. Another witness remembers her smile freezing, the kind of brittle social smile that says you'll regret that later. But Meghan wasn't the type to give up easily. She waited until the next rotation of guests and tried again, this time positioning herself near the Kardashian daughters during a casual champagne toast. She placed herself perfectly in the middle third of the frame, angled toward the camera, chin lifted slightly. Every publicist in the room recognized that pose instantly. "She knew her light," said one stylist who watched from a few feet away. But the problem was, so did Kris. Because across the room, Kris Jenner noticed the maneuver. And the subtle nod she gave her event director said everything. Within seconds, the lighting crew dimmed one side of the room. The photographer was redirected to get some B-roll of the dessert table, and the moment evaporated before Meghan could cement it. To Kris, it was business. To Meghan, it was sabotage. And from that point on, the tension was unmistakable. Guests started whispering that something felt icy between the two women. One insider described it like this: Kris was polite, but it was the kind of polite that makes your blood run cold. Even Harry seemed to sense it. He stood by Meghan's side like a man walking a tightrope, smiling, nodding, whispering reassurances. But he looked exhausted, out of place. Every photo taken that night captured it in his eyes. Then came the breaking point, the stage-managed moment everyone in that mansion would remember. It happened near the grand staircase where Kris planned to take her iconic solo shot, the centerpiece image for the eventual post. The staircase was bathed in warm light, gold petals scattered across each step, a literal throne at the top. It was Kris's coronation shot, the one she'd planned for months. But just before the cameras rolled, Meghan appeared at the edge of the scene. Not intentionally to steal the spotlight, at least not in her mind. She simply wanted to help create the vibe, as one of her friends later told the press. But in doing so, she stepped right into the frame, standing a few feet too close, gesturing toward Kris like a director cueing her star. She was giving notes, one staffer said flatly. To Kris Jenner. The room froze. Cameras paused mid-click. For a split second, no one knew what to do. Kris didn't raise her voice, she never has to, but the temperature dropped like someone opened a freezer. She turned her head slightly, smiled at Meghan with a kind of motherly calm, and said in that velvet and steel tone that made her famous, "Darling, I've got this." That line echoed through the hall like a gunshot. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. The end of the conversation, the final word, the unspoken warning. This is my house, my stage, my story. Meghan laughed it off, touching Kris's arm, pretending not to notice. But everyone else did. They saw the Queen reassert her crown. A few minutes later, Meghan quietly stepped back. Harry put a hand on her shoulder. She whispered something to him. No one caught what, but his expression turned tight, jaw set. That was when Kris decided. In her mind, there was no coming back from that moment. To the public, the deletion later looked like petty drama. But for Kris, it was about order. She believes in hierarchies, the kind built not on bloodlines, but on power, loyalty, and control. When someone tries to direct her narrative, they become a liability. And that night, Meghan became one. Still, Kris wasn't vindictive. She finished her shoot, thanked her guests, and smiled through the rest of the evening. Meghan and Harry lingered a while longer, chatting with Oprah and Serena Williams near the dessert table. To outsiders, nothing seemed amiss. But behind the polite laughter, the decision had already been made. What's fascinating is that several insiders claim Kris actually liked Meghan at first. She admired her hustle, her polish, her confidence. But Kris's admiration has boundaries. It ends where her control begins. And Meghan had just crossed it. She has this thing, one former Kardashian staffer explained. If she can't manage you, she'll remove you. And true to form, Kris removed her. By dawn, the photos from the staircase, the toast, the group shots, all of them were reviewed. Any image containing Meghan or Harry was quietly tagged, archive only. That's Kardashian code for never to be seen again. The photographers didn't question it. The editors didn't ask why. They'd seen this before. Kris doesn't rant or fire off angry texts. She simply deletes, and the world rearranges itself accordingly. But Kris didn't anticipate how fast the deletion would go viral, or how much noise it would generate. To her, it was a small act of housekeeping. To the internet, it was war. And for Meghan, it was déjà vu all over again. Because she'd been here before, the public freezing her out, the silent judgment, the sudden isolation. Only this time, it wasn't the British establishment cutting her off. It was Hollywood. The very world she'd counted on to save her image was turning its back. And somewhere deep down, that must have hurt more than anything Buckingham Palace ever did. Still, Meghan wasn't ready to surrender. According to one of her former PR strategists, Meghan believed she could reshape the story once again. Her instinct was to spin. She started calling mutual contacts, dropping subtle comments about how wonderful Kris had been, how supportive and kind she was during the event. She hoped to reframe the optics before the press could weaponize them. But Kris didn't bite. When a reporter reached out to Kris's team asking if she had any comment on Meghan's attendance, they responded with a single sentence. Kris had a beautiful night celebrating with family and friends. No mention of Meghan. No denial. No warmth. Just absence. And in Kris's world, absence is the statement. The internet, of course, filled in the blanks. Meghan tried to stage her own photos. She got blocked from Kris's frame. She made it all about herself. It didn't matter what really happened. The narrative was written, and Kris was still holding the pen. The irony? Meghan, who'd once accused the palace of editing her out of history, now found herself edited out of Hollywood's most famous social circle. Same story, different queen. And yet, one detail remained hidden from the public eye until weeks later. Something overheard in the background of that staircase moment. Something Meghan said under her breath, not realizing someone was listening. A short comment. A throwaway line. But in Kris's house, words travel fast. That single sentence, innocent or not, was all Kris needed to confirm her decision. Because when that remark reached her ears, Kris realized Meghan wasn't just trying to control a photo. She was trying to control her narrative. And Kris Jenner doesn't let anyone do that. Not royals. Not billionaires. Not even family. What did Meghan say that night? Why did it hit Kris so hard? And how did it escalate from a deleted photo to an industry-wide freeze-out? Those answers were about to surface. Because within 48 hours, Kris's phone would ring. On the other end, Meghan Markle herself. calling to ask the one question she never should have asked. And Kris's reply would go down in Hollywood history. But that's the next chapter. Because once that phone call ended, there was no going back. No undo button. No more misunderstandings. It was the moment Meghan realized that in Hollywood, the crown doesn't protect you. The Queen of Calabasas does. And when she turns against you, you disappear. But what Kris said during that phone call was colder than silence itself. The internet may think Kris Jenner deleted Meghan Markle out of pettiness, jealousy, or some Hollywood grudge. But insiders know the truth. The Kardashians never delete people by accident. They delete people with purpose. Every cut is clean. Every omission is strategic. And every silence is louder than a headline. That's how the family built an empire. By mastering the art of selective erasure. Because the Kardashians don't end friendships. They phase people out of relevance. Quietly, effortlessly, without ever breaking a nail. And Meghan Markle? She became the latest casualty of that strategy. Now, to understand why that deletion mattered so much, you have to understand how Kris thinks. To most people, Instagram is a highlight reel. To Kris, it's a battlefield. Every photo, every caption, every tag is a move on a chessboard of fame. Her photo dumps are not random. They're declarations of alliance. Inclusion means protection. Exclusion means exile. It's not just about friendship. It's about control. In Hollywood, who you're seen with is more powerful than any press release. Appear in Kris's post, and your brand stock rises overnight. Get left out, and suddenly your phone stops ringing, your invites slow down, your PR team starts using words like repositioning. That's the power Kris Jenner wields. So when she deleted Meghan Markle, it wasn't an oversight. It was an execution order. A quiet one, but absolute. An insider who's worked with the Kardashian-Jenner team for years put it bluntly. If your photo doesn't make the grid, you're out. It's not personal, it's business. Kris doesn't have to say a word. The industry just gets it. And they did. Within days of the deletion, other influencers began pulling back. A-listers who once name-dropped Meghan in interviews suddenly went silent. Producers who had floated collaboration ideas ghosted her team. The ripple effect was instant, subtle, devastating. But let's rewind to the night it all began, to that fateful phone call. By the time Meghan reached Kris, the deletion had already gone viral. Comment sections were on fire. YouTubers were dissecting Kris's motives. Meme accounts were having a field day comparing Meghan to seasonal guests who didn't get renewed for next season. For Meghan, this wasn't just another tabloid storm. It was personal. After everything she'd fought to rebuild, her image, her credibility, her network, being deleted by Hollywood's Queen Mother felt like being excommunicated from paradise. So she did what Meghan always does when cornered. She called. Multiple sources confirmed that Kris's assistant answered first. She's very busy right now, the assistant said in that polished tone that makes rejection sound polite. But Meghan pressed. Please tell her it's urgent, she reportedly insisted. She'll want to take this call. 5 minutes later, Kris picked up. Now, Kris Jenner doesn't do emotion. Her calm is famous. Her composure is legend. But that day, her voice was all frost. Kris, Meghan started, keeping her tone light, almost casual. I noticed the photos from your post. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't an issue. For a moment, silence. Then Kris said 6 words that froze Meghan where she stood. Sweetheart, there's always a reason why. That's it. No apology. No denial. No elaboration. Just a velvet-wrapped warning. Meghan tried to laugh it off. Oh, I totally understand. Maybe there was a mix-up with your media team. Lighting, cropping, who knows. But Kris wasn't biting. Nothing's a mix-up when it comes to my posts, she said smoothly. Everything that's there is meant to be there. Everything that's not, well, there's a reason for that too. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She just let the words hang, heavy and deliberate. And Meghan, for once, had no comeback. After a long pause, Kris ended the call with a chirpy. Anyway, darling, it was so nice seeing you. Take care. Click. That was the end of the relationship. Inside sources say Kris didn't even debrief her team afterward. No rants. No gossip. She simply moved on to her next project. But that cold, 5-minute exchange traveled through Hollywood faster than wildfire. And once it spread, the message was unmistakable. Kris Jenner had closed the door on Meghan Markle. But why? To the public, it looked like drama. But to Kris, it was discipline. You see, Kris has one unbreakable rule in her empire. No one embarrasses the brand. And Meghan, intentionally or not, had done just that. That overheard staircase comment? It had made its way back to Kris before the night was even over. According to two guests, Meghan had whispered to another attendee, "This whole thing feels a bit staged, doesn't it? So performative." In Kris's house, that's heresy. Performative is the exact insult critics use against her empire. It's the word that implies the Kardashians are fake, their lives scripted, their fame unearned. To Kris, it's not just disrespectful, it's unforgivable. She called the Queen's kingdom fake, one insider said. That's like telling a magician his tricks aren't real, while you're still in his show. So when Kris heard those words, she didn't get angry. She got even. The deletion wasn't revenge, it was reputation management. She was protecting her brand from someone she now saw as unpredictable, ungrateful, and worst of all, disloyal. Because Kris doesn't deal in emotion. She deals in optics. And Meghan had become bad optics.